also on top of this, how much cultural will is there to sort of not surrender to bullying? How much of that is there? So, like you said, the century of humiliation, both for Xi Jinping and the Chinese populace, like willingness to go through some short-term pain to not be humiliated.
The story that's been intensively told about the past is something that provides the possibility for this to matter a lot. That it's something that's just so it's so much a part of the legitimating story of the Chinese Communist Party. And then you have to look at, are there things that are happening that aid the Chinese Communist Party story? So the rise of what can seem like or is anti-Chinese sentiment within the United States can feed that propaganda story. And so certainly, during COVID, there was a way that if you're the Chinese Communist Party and you're saying we get a disproportionate amount of blame for whatever happens in the world, then if there were things you could point to in the foreign media or from foreign governments, then that helps you. So I think, there is a setup here where certainly for Xi Jinping, I think the desire to not be seen weak is crucial.
Sometimes I wonder how much of these leaders operate on pure ego, because politically and on a human level, they don't want to come off as losers in a standoff versus coming to a economic win-win for both nations. And I worry that there is a real pride here, that the Century of Humiliation has deeply saturated the populace, the Communist Party, this idea where they're just not going to back down. And that, I think, will cause tremendous pain in the short term for the United States, I think for China and the world, because it completely transforms the supply chain of everything. There is a global nature, there is a multilateral nature of all the economic partnerships that are formed throughout the 21st century. And this kind of protectionist, nationalistic kind of ideology goes in the face of all of that. And it's going to create a huge amount of pain, like for regular Americans. But also, I worry that this increases, not decreases, the chance of a global war or conflict of different kinds. Do you see a hopeful possibility for resolution, for de-escalation here?
It's a hard time to figure out what you can to sort of hopeful angles. I mean, I guess what's hard to even balance these things out. So one of the things that I've thought about when you talk about rising chances of war, that often Taiwan comes to mind with China. And one of the things that I've thought of is that for Xi Jinping, that military action against Taiwan would be increased by um, a sense of desperation, a sense of losing popularity, or a sense of not having a good story to tell about why he and the party deserves to lead. So then there's a kind of way of playing to the nationalist sentiments of some part of the population. So then, in a sense, it's hopeful that I think in some ways right now, Xi Jinping is not looking desperate in the eyes of the world. He can, if he can focus on potentially being seen more positively in other parts of the world by seeming like a kind of force for stability, seen as somebody who's supporting rather than challenging some elements of the global order, that might lessen the chances of a rash action toward Taiwan that would be a kind of desperation move.
The complicated thing here is that if he gives in, he can come off as the responsible person who cares about the world, or he can come off weak. If he doesn't give in and even escalates the tariffs, although I think he said no more escalation on the China front, then he comes off strong, but also the equally unreasonable person who doesn't care about the world, who only cares about his own ego and maybe some aspect of the Communist Party maintaining power. Because just like with Tiananmen Square and the Tank Man, you don't know once you make the decision how the world will read that decision, what kind of things will become viral memes about the telling of that story. And of course, in part, I think Donald Trump's reach is much wider because he's constantly out there. And I think there's a more reserved, less messaging out of Beijing. So it's a really chaotic environment in which to make strong decisions.